Okay, guys, so let me go ahead and move the microphone real quick so we can get some better audio going on with this. Now, it took me some time to figure out essentially what was going on with this whole scenario with Martin O'Malley. And as you guys know, President Biden is now working heavily to push for this agenda of switching to this new commissioner. Now, it didn't really make sense to me in the very beginning. And let me make sure the audio is okay, because I know the last video, the microphone wasn't in the right spot. So here, I'm going to place it over here. I wasn't totally sure why President Biden was essentially pushing for this idea, this change of Martin O'Malley coming in place over Commissioner Kijakazi. Commissioner Kijakazi comes from the SSA. She is, let me get that a little straightened out. She is essentially what you'd expect from somebody who comes from a background that you'd want running the Social Security Administration. So Commissioner Kijakazi has worked for multiple nonprofits previously. Commissioner Kijakazi used to work for and did work for the SSA, and now, of course, works at a much higher position. So the crazy, difficult thing about this is understanding essentially why a politician who's never had a traditional middle or lower level government job, because if you look at his career from becoming an attorney to then going straight into politics, you find out really good. T-Pie, I have to catch up with you, by the way. I see you in the comments there. What happens is this. It's hard for me to understand and grasp the reality of why President Biden would swap out Commissioner Kijakazi for essentially a politician. You have somebody who's capable of basically, running portions of the SSA, who then gets promoted to a higher level to run the SSA. So I'm thinking, okay, this is a really great commissioner. We have somebody that can do an amazing job. She knows the system. She's been part of the corporation before. She's just going to work it at a higher level. Made sense. But now he wants to have Martin O'Malley. Let me tell you a little bit about this situation. I had to go back all the way to 2015. From Social Security Works, this is a statement directly from them on August 22nd, 2015, set up for immediate release. Statement on government Social Security plan. This is what Social Security Works had to say. They obviously lean left, but from a standpoint, they usually are very proactive and a good thing for saying what would be positive options for Social Security recipients. So even though they lean left, they're usually pretty good. Washington, D.C., the following is a statement from the president of Social Security Works, Governor Martin O'Malley, who is seeking to be the 2016 Democratic presidential nominee, just released wise and thoughtful proposals which effectively address the looming retirement income crisis as well as a number of other challenges facing the nation. Too many working Americans fear that they may never be able to retire because of the disappearance of traditional pension plans and proven inadequacy of the 401k plans. Stagnant wages and the loss of home equity, Social Security is the nation's most universally efficient and secure source of retirement income. But its benefits are inadequate by virtually any measure. These earned Social Security benefits are all that stand between millions of Americans and their complete destitution. Now, he goes on to basically say why Social Security benefits are super ultra important. But what's important is this. He proposes, so the president of Social Security Works, giving a statement about Martin O'Malley as he's trying to become a president back in 2015. He proposes to pay for these expansions, as well as Social Security's currently projected shortfall, right, because it's running out of money, by requiring the wealthiest among us, those who have reaped such rewards from the nation's productivity over the last few decades, to pay the same rate into Social Security on all their income that low and average paid workers do. Governor O'Malley understands that one of the best ways to bolster Social Security funding is to employ workers in good-paying jobs. Therefore, he also proposes a long overdue increase in the minimum wage and comprehensive immigration reform. Governor O'Malley's Social Security and related proposals underscore what a visionary, pragmatic, fiscally responsible, and compassionate leader he is. Obviously, it's highly left-leaning, but still, they're right about a lot of this stuff. He understands that Social Security is a solution to our looming retirement income crisis and the financial squeeze confronting today's working families and the nation's rising and dangerous income inequalities. So, I tend to like to look at, groups that lean very this way or very that way, because I like to look right in the middle as to which way the group is going to go. Social Security Works applauds Governor O'Malley as a true champion of Social Security because Social Security affects us all. That makes him a champion of all Americans. So aside from the cheerleader stuff of what Social Security Works had to say about him, What they're really getting at here, just to make things clear, is that, just to make things, he is one of the earlier individuals to promote the idea of raising the Social Security FICA tax to people who go ahead and essentially make over a certain amount. It's currently set at $160,200, that if you earn over that amount, if you have income beyond that amount, you don't pay any more FICA. Now, when you read this, it sounds like rich people don't pay any FICA. And that's not true. Everybody pays FICA up to the 160,200. But then above that, people don't pay any FICA tax on their income because they get no benefit. They don't get more retirement benefits. They don't get more, Medicare, more, Social Security disability benefits. They just don't get any more. There's no benefit to them. The Democrat proposal to increase it so that, essentially whether they take the cap completely off and then whether you make, $500,000 or $1 billion that year, you have to pay FICA taxes on all of it. The idea that the rich are going to have to pay an additional 12.4% on whatever their income is above 160,200 is going to be very popular with the middle class and the lower class when it comes to earning capacity. But the wealthy and the upper class, the super duper wealthy, they are not going to be happy with this at all. Now, we know from this, since President Biden is getting rid of somebody who came from the industry of nonprofits and is replacing them with a politician, we know that President Biden is trying to, instead of so much as have somebody who knows the system fix the system, have somebody who's a friend of his political, ideas. Since President Biden wants to go ahead and utilize this idea, which was promoted by Martin O'Malley way back in the day, what this comes down to is kind of the following. President Biden's big push to tell people in 2024 that he should remain president for the most talked about topic for the next presidential election, which will be Social Security benefits, will be that those individuals out there voting should know that they should vote for President Biden because he supports massively taxing the wealthy to pay their fair share. The thing is, right, he's putting in a politician at the SSA who can come up with a lot of, obviously, quotes and comments about how that direction would significantly help out the future of, the Social Security Administration. But here's the deal. Those people that have lots of money, they don't like getting taxed. They spend a lot of time and money and effort learning the tax code and reducing the likelihood of additional taxes. So if you have a lot of individuals who make money outside of the country that then foster and promote and give money to the Democratic Party, then the Democratic Party is not going to be very, they're not going to be very upset by making rich people in America pay more taxes. But if rich people in America that pay taxes are going to be necessary to make President Biden the next president when it comes to funding, then realistically, this would not be a good plan for President Biden. Now, we know that the choice was already made because he wouldn't have chosen to swap out commissioners from Commissioner Kijakazi to Commissioner Martin, well, not yet commissioner, but potential Commissioner Martin O'Malley. We know that at this point, he's already made the choice that this is going to be his punting ground. This is the football that he's going to kick as far as he can. So we now know that President Biden is going in that direction. What we don't know is essentially if he goes in that direction, what will happen when it comes to the likelihood of it actually getting passed. Now, there were a lot of things that got passed during the COVID situation that should have never even been put on paper. Similarly, with this huge election situation, I believe that President Biden will create a Social Security bill that's, basically promoted by him that makes the Republicans look as bad as possible. That's the game, right? Whether or not it will pass, it's not that important. It's not that important. But the game basically is, what is the potential of creating something that essentially could, realistically win an election? And my whole thing here is this. I think that, in my opinion, and I could be wrong, this is a smart move for President Biden. as you know, funding for presidents, and they need a lot of funding to go ahead and run, do everything they need to do. I mean, the game is literally about funding. How much have you raised? How many people support you? Yada yada. Those are like the two things you need. You need money and you need people, the votes. My belief is that he has secured enough people that are super ultra wealthy outside of the country so that he no longer needs those who are wealthy inside of the country to secure his votes. Because, and it's simple logic and it's easy to prove, the idea is that if you are going to massively increase the taxes on the wealthy by taking away another 12.4% from money they earn over $160,200, then you are going to massively tax the wealthy in a new way that they didn't have before. There are ways that he could fix this. He could make it so that the wealthy get a slightly better increase in either, retirement benefits or whatever. The more they pay, the more they get. But let's call it like it is. The wealthy are not worried about a $3,000, $4,000 or less, right? And the national average is $1,800 right now, a little bit less than $1,800 per month. The wealthy aren't worried about that check. They don't care. They care about the tax of another 12.4% above that 160K. That's massive to people. So if the wealthy have to pay another 12.4% on top of the taxes they already pay, which are obviously skewed against their wealth, against their happiness, against them doing well, then what happens is you piss off all the wealthy people who would potentially give you money, which is one of the rules you never commit when you're running for president, because if you're running for president, you need votes and money. So we now know that this is what he's going to push. We don't know, essentially, I'm just going to move this camera a little bit. We don't know one thing, how effective this is going to be. Here's my thought on this whole effectiveness problem. If you were to get this to pass, right, assuming that the super wealthy were pissed off, assuming that, it went through, it is what it is. If you were to get this to pass, it would strengthen the Social Security trust funds for a time, not forever, because remember, America keeps doing less and less financially well, right? They just decreased our AAA rated bonds down to AA plus, which I don't think has ever happened in the history of America. I just think the country is in such a poor economic state that, it doesn't have to be that way in the future. It can turn around. But the point is, unfortunately, our bonds define the validity of our ability to pay back people, right? That's what the country's thing is. And we have loans out to Japan, China, Luxembourg, Ireland. So the point, and then of course the American people, the problem is America is no longer that strong, mighty eagle that people would see, that bald eagle sitting up on the tree. It's more of like a sickly, like kind of like pigeon. And so the problem with that is that, and this is going to sound bad and this is going to sound terrible, but if we don't have, and that's what Martin O'Malley is saying here, which is one of the good things about Martin O'Malley, he understands that if we don't have Americans working and earning better, working and earning more hours working, more hours or more money coming in, if we don't have Americans, basically earning more, paying more taxes, because remember, the system is skewed against the American, right? It's always been skewed against the American in the sense of how much you get out of it. So when people are like, I paid in this much for retirement, and this is all I got. Well, yeah, the system has always been skewed against you basically getting the amount of benefits. You like if you held onto the money and you were smart with investments, that money would have been worth vastly hundreds, I don't know, say that, but 2 times, 3 times, maybe even 10 times, 20 times more than if you put it into the bonds for the US. Everybody knows that. The bonds for the US market doesn't give you a high enough return. That's why we're in the situation we're in. That's why the retirement trust fund is running out. So for those people who are sitting back going like, why did I have to do this? Why was I in retirement? Their arguments are valid too, because they're sitting back going like, I just paid all this money into this federal system, and this federal system did not make enough money as return with it. And as a result of that, they're unhappy, and it makes sense because they paid all this money and it was just a tax that on money that they didn't get to enjoy or even use to further invest or make them happy and buy luxury stuff or whatever. The point is, at the end of the day, the rich have to always subsidize the poor. what this rule to go ahead and remove, and I know what Biden's doing, the fact that he's been talking about, but I think $160,200 is not really, that's not upper class. That ain't even close. That's middle class. That's maybe middle upper class, right? That's on the upper end of the middle class. So the point is, when you get into like 200,000, 300,000, I think 300,000 realistically is a point at which you could get rid of this whole situation. And Biden was saying, well, even more than that, even above 400,000 potentially, that they would then go ahead and remove it there and then tax more people above that. The problem, though, with this situation is that a lot of the people who are in Congress make more through all of their investments and yada yada. Because remember, they're very smart individuals. They got there for a reason. They know how to do market manipulation. They know how to make capitalism work for them. They know how money works. Many people don't know how money works. They don't know how taxation works. They've always just done their job, gone home, gotten a check, and that's it. They don't know where the money's going when it gets taxed. They don't care. They just know they can't have it. So what's happening, I think, in the future with this whole situation is that President Biden is setting the whole stage for the Social Security Administration to be in his pocket when it comes to delivering quotes, delivering actionable news that will beat whoever the Republican side presents. And here's why I'm saying this is important. All right, let's imagine we're in 2024. Let's imagine it is July or August of 2024. We're coming down to the final months, right? Where the whole next president is going to be decided. It's crazy. It's wow. I can't believe it's almost, it's been 4 years at that point. Wow, blah, blah, blah. Point is, if you know that the most important topic is going to be Social Security benefits, then who is the king of Social Security benefits? Well, right now it's a queen. That's Commissioner Kijikazi, but she's only acting. But if you swap that individual out as a trial tactic, a political tactic, then you put somebody in who can on demand, even though there's supposed to be some neutrality there, but on demand, produce quotes and statements that you can use to attack the Republican Party and also basically bolster your position that this is the right move. I think that this move is a good move to go ahead and work on that cap. I don't think what they're talking about is perfect. I think they need to work on a little bit more with the financial numbers. You know what I mean? Like, how far up the steps do we go ahead and do this to people? I think the main issue that I see with this at the end of the day is that if President Biden is not successful with essentially changing the law, then it's all just a bunch of promises. As you know, people are not super duper happy with the current administration because it's a lot of promises, a lot of things that were said, a lot of things that were pushed that never actually made it onto paper. Yes, they have the Republicans fighting them. But to be fair, I don't think they've figured out a good middle ground for both parties on this whole situation. The Republicans are going to be increasingly unpopular for Social Security because they keep talking about raising the age of retirement. Now, that would be a constitutional violation when it comes to basically a taxation through a contract that you signed by being born when you paid it in. Now, granted, if somebody did not pay in already, they could change the rules on that person, and then you wouldn't have a violation. But otherwise, if they change this rule, I would have to be nuts not to go ahead and file a lawsuit as a class action against them to say that they violated the contractual agreement that the Social Security Administration, with its math, to pay a certain amount of benefits, should have, would have, could have paid to these people at a certain point, and that they basically violated their own Ponzi scheme. So the reality here is that at the end of the day, and this is what we're looking for from this situation, we have to know where President Biden is going to go with this. And he either ends up, one, with making promises that this is the fix. We get rid of the FICA cap and we just tax everybody, right? Or we do a donut where we, allow people from here to not have to pay FICA, and then everybody above 400,000, 500,000, 600,000, whatever, to pay the FICA tax. Or, right, he makes those promises and doesn't deliver, or he actually delivers and gets it passed. Now, Martin O'Malley still has to go through the Senate. And to be fair, the Senate is, in my opinion, going to be a tough situation for him First off, the Senate hasn't really put somebody in that place for the Social Security Administration for, I think it's decades at this point. So President Biden is in a little bit of a unique situation. He can have a weapon in the 2024-2025 presidential election on the most talked about topic, which will be Social Security benefits for that presidential election. He can have a weapon, but he's got to get it through the Senate. If he doesn't, he still gets to keep Commissioner Kijakazi, which isn't a bad thing for him either, because, obviously the statements she's come out with have sometimes leaned left. That's why he picked her, because he's a Democrat. He gets to pick who's at the top of the SSA. That's what that whole fight was about with Commissioner Saul. Commissioner Saul was going to sue them, but then it came out, well, because it's such a high position that, directly reports to the president, we think the president should be able to pick their cabinet members of the administration, agencies, right? And that's what the SSA, it's a giant agency. It's one of the mega big ones. So it's not so much a smaller agency, which the president wouldn't be able to just fire this person, fire that person without having some degree of them totally screwing up. So at this point, I think, okay, now here's the other side of it. And this is what nobody's talking about. And this is something I think from a Democrat versus Republican standpoint, a non-political opinion. This is a no political opinion here. I think that when you look at the state of businesses right now, when you look at their ability to pay people, when you look at their ability to retain talented individuals who can go ahead and make sales, build products, do technical stuff, ultimately they, to some degree, are going to have a tougher time keeping people in this country. Because every time you raise taxes and the government sells the identity that they're going to fix something, it's kind of like the, military saying that here's the plan, and then it gets totally botched, costs 5 times as much, and, people get really injured as a result of it. It just doesn't work out the way they expect it to. One of the things that we don't talk about, but we should, is the health of corporations in America and their ability to entice future individuals to go ahead and basically sign up to work, with these specific jobs. Now, some of you are saying, well, these talented people, do we really need them? We've got robots, we've got AI. Do we really need them? Yeah, we need them massively. Welders, we need them. Scientists, we need them. Doctors, we need them. Lawyers, we absolutely need them, because all this stuff is based on law. So the point here that I'm getting at is, if Americans start leaving the country because taxation is not in favor, and let me explain which kind of Americans. It's going to be those kinds of Americans who make more $1,000 a year, right? That's who potentially will leave. If we put this extra tax on them, if you look at those individuals that would be most likely to be injured by this tax, those are the individuals who earn just slightly more than where the cap is already at. So if the person earns $180,000, they're going to be hurt the most. If the person earns $200,000, they're going to be hurt the most. $250,000 hurt the most. That group is going to be hurt the most because they rely on less money to make more things happen. Now, sure, you could say the rich are going to be injured more. You could say, okay, well, they had $5 million. And so let's bring up the calculator real quick. I know I've done this before with this calculation, but let's bring it up anyways. If we bring up the calculator and we say, okay, a rich person brings in $5 million, right? So we go $5 million and multiply that by 0.124. That's $62,000. Let me do it again. 5 million. That didn't seem right. Wait a minute, hold on. 1, 2, 3. Nope, sorry. 1, 2, 3 times 0.124. That equals it was $620,000. So bottom line is, if somebody makes 5 million and we then tax that wealthy person another $620,000, then you would say, well, that person's injured more. And you could make that argument that the rich are losing more money, sure. But it's really the people just directly above that current threshold of $160,200 who are going to be hurt the most by losing that extra money, because 12.4% is a chunk. It is a chunk. So the point is, and I think that what this comes down to is America is becoming less and less of the American dream of what it used to be. I think if you look at the cost of doing business, it's drastically risen. And now part of that is because a lot of stuff isn't made in this country. You can look at Democrats and Republicans, they both made that mistake. And at the end of the day, we have to then buy all this stuff from overseas. And when you have to, as a company, buy so much more overseas, you're constantly throwing more and more of that potential profit that you would have had out the door. And so ultimately, what happens is the countries that have the things produced there in that country are able to succeed over a longer period of time when it comes to buying and selling, because it's already in the country. Transportation's low, currency doesn't have to be swapped, it's already in the currency it needs to be when the sale or purchase actually goes on. America hasn't been in that chair since basically the 2000 era. 1990s, a lot of things were set up overseas for production, and then you can go way back to the 50s to see some of the earliest part of that. The problem I foresee is that retirement, Social Security benefits in general, is never really going to meet the mark of all these graphs that they always create, because they create graphs with the expectation that America is going to keep doing what America does, which is, kick butt, make money, produce big profit, blah, blah, blah. That's not America anymore. That wasn't America for a little while now. The new America is striving to hold on to whatever power it has as prima facie power of Earth. It's something that has to rely significantly on foreign nations for its chips, products, a lot of the stuff we buy. Just going to any Walmart, where's most of the stuff made? So ultimately, because we don't produce products, we are becoming less and less of a superpower, because if we need them, we can't always get them, and we can't always get them cheaply. We've been relying heavily on our superiority in the sense of America being this great, wow thing. But you have to keep in mind, America was able to take care of itself back in the day. Now America is constantly racing to create bills to limit other nations from being the only thing that actually makes a product that's necessary for either our country or military to succeed. I had somebody argue with me on the phone yesterday, specifically about how America is doing economically. Since we have now seen Yellen come out and basically say we're lowering the standards from the AAA, AA+, since we are now seeing that some of the numbers aren't looking so good, essentially, for holiday spending, transportation limitations of the American public. Just look at what the jetliners are doing when it comes to new jets. Are they buying new jets? Are they buying modified jets? Are they upgrading their current jets? What are they doing, right? So many of the things that I would say is this, when it comes to the future of Social Security benefits, it's never going to be fixed. Like this whole situation when it comes to, the retirement trust fund not having enough money. Like even if you have the rich pay their fair share, it's never going to be fixed. It's always going to be a situation where, okay, we have the rich right now, but now where are the rich? And trust me, if you do this, the rich are going to move out of this country, or at least divert their funds so that their income comes outside of the country. California is a good example of basically significant groups with money leaving a sovereign area, which unfortunately drastically reduces that state to go ahead and get taxes. If we tax the rich 12.4%, which sounds awesome, and that will fix the Social Security system real quick in the sense of having enough money in the trust funds, the problem is, even if we do that, right, we're going to see an erosion in the amount of rich people who are actually here earning money and using that money. Now, at the same time, a lot of people who don't understand how money works or the effects of general economics, they will argue that just do it anyways, we need to save the poor. And the weird thing about that for me is that There's no consideration as to the long-term effect. Now, when I was doing my MBA, we would study things at intervals. Okay, what's the 6 month, the 1 year, the 5 year, the 10 year, the 15 year? We would study what would happen, and every time we would increase that metric, right, from 1 year, 5 year, 10 year, 15 year, the bullet points of what would happen would change, right? Because we know that if we do essentially a change in taxation where we now charge all these super rich a lot of money, if we do that, then what immediately happens is you have the trust funds full. We're good for so many years. Nobody really knows how long because it all depends on how well the wealthy are going to do. If the wealthy are making lots of money, trust funds are good. We get to tax the hell out of them. If they're not making lots of money, then this whole exercise didn't work as well as we thought it would. And I think that the reality here is that if we say, okay, what's going to happen within the first 6 months, it's going to be like magic, instant fix. Wow, super cool. But then if we look at the 10 year, we'll have seen probably within that period a large percentage of those who make money moving operations outside of this country to produce more outside of this country, do more sales outside of this country, set up more shops outside of this country for where they can make more money for each transaction that they do. Sure, they'll still do America, but they're just not going to like. And let me give you an example of what wealthy people do. When wealthy people have okay, so imagine you have $100 million, and that $100 million you need to invest into a company to globalize it. Are you going to, if the tax rate is really shitty, spend basically that money heavily in America, where you're going to put let's say 20% of it into America? Or is that 20% going to decrease significantly because you're spending more money elsewhere outside of the nation, in developing areas like Africa or some of the smaller Southeast Asia, island chains and things like that? Well, obviously, you're going to go where the tax benefits are the best. That's just how it works. You're going to invest your money, your $100 million, not so much in America. And then what happens is America starts to slowly decline. So now we're looking at 30 years in the future. America is now declining in what its products are. So one of the things, if you ever go to another country, you'll realize that A, the products that they sell you at the grocery store, they're different. And B, everything costs usually a little bit more, right? Because they don't have that purchasing power that America has. And some of the products are better, but most of them not so much. But that's a lot of it's because it's what we're used to. We like our products. We're used to that, so we think that's better. Even though a lot of the food products we sell in this country are filled with things that are very, very bad for us. But the point is, you go to another country, it's a different setup. It's a different economy. It's a different everything. If that economy is more friendly to people who make money that don't want to pay as much taxes, then that economy will become the base ground, right? Base camp for launching more and more of that company. So let me explain to you how that works with big companies. Big companies, I'm going to scooch a little bit. What they'll do is they'll go ahead and reach out to banks, and they will seek essentially a certain worth, right? So the bottom line is that they'll go ahead and say, okay, we as a company, we want banks to give us a valuation. And the banks will come back and say, okay, we value you because of what you are at, $500 million or $1 billion or $2 billion or whatever, right? And then they go, okay, cool. Because we have this valuation, we now want to borrow money to grow economically by setting up more businesses here, more businesses here, more businesses here. Here's the business model we have. Let's do it. And the banks say, okay, cool. We will loan you this money at this percent rating, this percentage, and you can go and build all of your things all over the place. So they build all these, businesses of their company. We put up a building here, we put up a building there, we put up a building here. We're adding 50 new of this company here, 50 new of this company here, and 50 new of this company there, right? What will happen over a 30-year period with something like this is that America will be less likely to have people bringing more products and innovation into the marketplace. Now, one thing that most Americans don't know, and I tried to explain this to a person the other day, but they just started screaming at me because it's people just get emotional about this stuff. Oops, sorry. So what happens is this: if you have an economy, right, and the economy basically is not conducive for rich people to make money, then the future generations, the future products are going to be less likely to come into that marketplace. And marketplaces define essentially what the future is for, that country having the newest iPhone, the newest Nikes, the newest this, the newest that, the newest computer programs in English, the newest computer programs in Spanish, whatever. So when you get rid of those things, what happens is, unfortunately, you end up in a situation where a country is not growing as fast as it used to. America, in that regard, in my opinion, is not growing as fast as it could. It's hindered because it doesn't have the oil. Now, with that said, it doesn't really matter if we have the newest iPhones, the newest cars, the newest this, the newest that. Like, it doesn't really matter if we have that stuff. It's just a nice thing because we're America and we're used to it, and we're used to having the best of the best, the most recent, the most whatever, etc. The problem is when you go into the 50-year mark, right? 50 years down the line, now the country has no longer become and stayed as this thing where the rich have wanted to use and sell in its marketplace. So instead of having the major corporations invest into the American marketplace, you now have them completely heavily investing into other continents that provide, a significant amount of better increased likelihood of return, an ROI, return on investment. Marketplace, and I want to say this, and I know most people don't know this very well, and I could always do it better if I had more time to prepare the video, but the bottom line is marketplace defines everything. Marketplace is the mob, right? It is the great cheering people of essentially, the great chariot races of Rome. It is literally the thing that defines culture, the marketplace. And think about it. How many of you have a TV that gives you certain products, but you don't even think about the products that it doesn't give you? Well, you can log into that, you can do that, but other countries have other things that the TV can do that you can't even access. So the marketplace defines culture. It defines everything about us. And if the marketplace no longer views America as a place where it can make, have rich people make lots of money, then unfortunately, over a long-term effect, the country will significantly suffer. Now, what's the reality of this? Why did this occur? Why are we even in this situation? We are in this situation because Social Security was created a very long time ago. And that very, very long time ago, the US dollar was worth a lot because it hadn't significantly devalued. Over the years, the politicians have played with the math and played with the dollars and cents of it. And the dollar, they kept borrowing against it. Whether they were borrowing against the American people, whether other nations, they were getting a loan from it, the politicians kept borrowing until we hit the 32 trillion mark. When a country spends completely out of control, which is what you would call this is trillions of dollars every year out of control. When a country spends completely out of control, what you end up with is something that will de facto have to fail. It's going to have to fail because otherwise we would have to just massively cut spending. And anybody that says we're going to cut spending is attacked and they lose their political job. And I understand why, because let's call it like it is. If they don't lose their job, right, then people would, understand that the country is in such a bad shape. And then we would start to blame who put the country in such a bad shape. And let me make this clear. That's both Democrats and Republicans. They both did this. It's not one side did this. They both did this. The politicians are afraid of the one question. And I think it's important that you understand this. The one question is very simple. Who allowed, right, the Social Security Retirement Trust Fund to get this bad? Now, you can blame the American people and say, well, they didn't pay enough taxes in or they didn't make enough money. You can blame the U.S. bond market for not growing the money that we paid in fast enough to be a large enough amount. You can blame a lot of people, but ultimately at the end of the day, it comes down to one group, and that's the politicians. The politicians never want to be blamed because that makes them look bad. And if you blame politicians, the first thing they're going to do is go into like, it wasn't me mode. Oh, come on, guys mode, all that stuff. But let's be very clear here. The politicians who have been in for significant lengths of time, 20, 30, 40 years, both Republicans and Democrats, those politicians are who we blame because they were there. They were there when Bill Clinton was suggesting and very likely to do these massive changes to Social Security, which is going to help the country invest into the trust funds by doing all these future investment changes. And then, of course, the Oval Office situation happened, impeachment ran through, and we didn't get those Social Security changes. So ultimately, what happened? Politicians. Politicians ruined Social Security. Who will bear the brunt of it? In this case, not the people, more so the rich. What will happen to the rich? They will literally leave the country. They'll stop producing new products here. They'll stop putting the newest and the best here. They'll just choose other continents to make more money because the taxes will just be too high in America to make money. Now, some of you will say, well, the rich don't really pay that much in taxes. That we know is absolutely 100% false. The rich pay the most taxes. Now, do they pay the most taxes as a percentage of what they actually make? No, they know the rules. They know how to manipulate them better than anybody. But do they pay the most money in taxes? Yeah, they pay the most money in taxes compared to other people. Obviously, that's an obvious thing. Are there ways to shore up our taxation so that we can basically have more proper taxation of the wealthy? Absolutely. Hitting them with a blanket 12.4% for Social Security look, it's not a bad idea because it goes ahead and fixes the immediate problem. Is it going to cost America to continue to go down that pit of hell to a country not being successful? Yeah, because let's call it like it is. The success of America is not so much the little corporations that it used to be. Like, think about it. Think about all the little towns out there and all the CVSs, all the Home Depots, all the Lowe's, all the Walmarts, all those things. How many of you actually go to a little old hardware store? I go to one in Cocoa. I go to that one. But how many of you actually go to a little, true back whatever, hardware store like back in the day? Because the one that I used to go to, which was Andy's down the street in New Jersey, right on Belvedere Road, Andy's hardware shop doesn't exist anymore. Now I think it's like a sewing embroidery store. Yeah. So the point I'm getting at with this whole situation is that we have to find a solution to this whole Social Security problem, but massively taxing the wealthy and President Biden putting in a new commissioner who was one of the first people to promote this idea. It's not a good long-term fix. It's a good short-term fix, but it's going to screw over America in the long term. Some of you will feel very strongly that hurting the rich any way that you can feels good. Some of you feel very strongly that taxing the rich any way that you can is the right thing to do. I only ask that you think of this in a larger picturesque kind of way, where when food increases even more because America isn't doing as much production as it used to because the wealthy aren't as interested in the marketplace, it's going to hurt the poor. And trickle-down theory to some degree is BS. I'm totally in agreement with that. You put money at the top, you expect it to trickle down, yada, yada. I get that. I get that. To some degree, there's BS in that. But where there's not BS is marketplace control of distribution and the culture that exists as a result of it, which is where the marketplace, the rich aren't happy. They will punish those who are not in it, whether it's intentional or not, by not producing the newest products, not producing as many products, or not, making transportation as readily available. I mean, look at transportation. Yellow, a company that's been in business, right? Yellow Transportation for 100 years is about to go out of business. That's insane. And you know what we learn from Yellow? There's one thing you can learn from the Yellow Transportation Corporation. It's really simple. It's really, really just basic. The one thing we can learn from the yellow transportation company is that when a corporation went by the old rules of paying out pensions, paying out all this money after people retire, that company de facto will fail because corporations in America are not able to make enough money going forward at the same rate to keep up with their current employees and their past employees. It ain't going to happen anymore. Somebody asked me the other day, what's your pension? I have zero pension. What's my 401k? I have zero 401k. I don't have them. It doesn't exist for my generation in that way. It just doesn't. It's something that, was from a far off land where people had a lot more money. The problem I see going forward, if I just summarize it all down, is that the poor and middle class will be weaponized to destroy the interest of the wealthy to create a future where America is doing well and striving well. Now, how do we fight this? Well, you can have a lot more small and mid-sized companies competing. You could do that. You get more people working, more people paying taxes. Because remember, when you consolidate to one corporation, that corporation is significantly more efficient and doesn't need two HR people. They only need one HR person. And then when they do that, they only get taxes, the federal government, for that one HR person. And that other person that would have been an HR person doesn't have a job. So you could create bills that foster small corporations and mid-sized corporations to be competitive against larger corporations. That's one fix, right? Another fix is basically doing something a little bit different, which is to go ahead and look at income and treat it very differently. We could, instead of going ahead and using of complete de facto, like what you can afford, where you can, etc., we could create a system that has education that is free through the college level and maybe even the master's level, that's federally funded for young people, which will give them a better start to have more money in the beginning to actually compete. There's a lot of Republicans out there who have a very difficult time with the basics of economic structure, and yet they're also arguing the strength of their mental capacity when it comes to economic structure. But please let me give you one little tip. If you, as a Republican, feel very strongly that these student loans are not your problem, then I say this: I hope you're very old, because you would be right only if you're very old. If you're in your 80s, it's not going to be your problem. If you're in your 70s, it's going to be a little bit your problem. If you're in your 60s, it's going to be a huge problem for you, because the products, the innovations, the hard, long hours of work are not going to be created, are not going to be done by the future groups, because all they're doing is working for the company to pay off student loans that are way too high and basically just, something that they have a life debt to. How inspired do you think younger workers, younger professionals are to innovate the future if they're a slave to student loans all the time? Of course, the traditional Republican that's now retired would say, screw them, I don't care, not my problem, not my focus. Why the hell would I go ahead and subsidize those people? Because if you have any kids, those people who make the future products and innovate the future ideas need to be able to afford a garage that they can actually prototype them in. And if you don't see the value of future minds creating future products, then all you've done is create a slave race that basically continuously works for some company doing a job where they answer a phone to tell somebody the status on a computer screen. And that's harmful to a lot of people to hear. It's very harmful for people to hear that. But, there's quick, short investments, right? Get as much money as that thing as we can. And that thing is the rich people to fix disability benefits. And then there's long-term investments. How do we make sure this country continues to innovate? How do we make sure this country continues to make the best AI, the best robots, the best space travel capsules? Do we have the best? Right now we do. Will we in 20 years? No, I can definitively answer for you without any limitation that the future brilliance of America is not spent dreaming and prototyping in their garage. They're spending their time basically working at a company to try and just get one little step up, one little step up, one little step up. And that's monopoly capitalism. That's what America has. It's monopoly capitalism. And monopoly is just as harmful as communism. A lot of people don't realize that, but the difference between monopoly and capital and communism is this. A monopoly is one corporation owning a field. Communism is one corporation owning a field. You know what the difference is? We think of monopoly as like a company that's owned by somebody. We think of, communism as a company that is the government. So what's the difference between a company that's owned by somebody who controls that field and a country that's owned by somebody that controls that field? There's not much difference. It's just, there's not. And we have capitalistic monopoly. That's what we have. So ultimately, what I think will happen is this. And I see a comment here. I see, where was it? Mayor said, when you see these huge houses, you don't see the owners outside. They're busy working for and can enjoy the home. So here's the big thing you have to keep in mind. Poor people and middle income people, they hate the wealthy when they have their super yachts and their super mansions and the signs that say private property and this and that. They hate them for that. But I just want to let you know, an economy does not actually work without people in different positions. Not everybody can be the CEO of a corporation, just like not everybody can go ahead and basically be the person who distributes, the garbage cans to people's houses when their garbage can breaks. Somebody's got to ride around and give a person a new garbage can. I've always maintained that I would have no problem working for McDonald's. No problem working for McDonald's. Like if the law firm just died tomorrow, I'd have no problem working for McDonald's because I grew up on a farm. I literally, after this video, do one more video and then I go outside and I literally will be weed whacking the edges of the fencing where all the manure is. And if you've ever weed whacked around manure, you know what happens. But the point is, and I hope you understand this, it takes all levels of people, all levels of education, all types of culture to make this whole thing work. And what scares me is that these changes, the idea of raising the age limit, on retirement, taxing the wealthy, a massive new 12.4%, both of them only give us short-sighted fixes. They don't even address the damn base problem, which is when we pay our money in, it doesn't grow enough inside the trust funds because our bonds are shit. Our US bonds are bad. They're not good. All right, let me give you an example. If our US bond market were to go ahead and let's just say it doubled the amount that it earned over a period of time. So let's say we had a bond and that bond over a year's worth of time, instead of earning 5, would earn 10. Instantly, no more problem. Trust funds are fine. Trust funds are totally fine, right? And that's a simple equation version of what our real problem is. If you want to fix the Social Security trust fund system, you just have to get the money that we pay in actually becoming worth more faster, which means that the scary, terrible thing is that we have to get our bonds doing better. Now, will our bonds as a nation do better under the current system? Well, that's a political thing. Well, it was a political thing until literally today. Yesterday, Yellen came out and said, no, we are now, I think for the first time in history, lowering our bond rating from the AAA to the AA+, which is like, because you have to understand, like, that's history. You know what I mean? Like the cup, the cup of God, right? The things you would see in Indiana Jones, right? Like that stuff, that's history. The American government, the wealthiest nation on earth, having to lower its bond market, like you pay money in, you're less likely to get money out in the way that you thought you would, because we're just not as successful and safe as a nation as we used to be. For America to lower its bond market rating it's incredible. It's history. It's like an actual line in time as to our economic sanctity to other countries. This is the first time I've ever seen something like this. So my point to you is, what is the number one thing they have to fix when it comes to this whole Social Security crisis? It's the bond market. What is the number one thing that's being destroyed right now? It's the bond market. How do we fix the bond market? If Martin O'Malley can come in and present ideas about fixing the bond market beyond just like, hey, what we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and get more Americans working and more Americans paying more taxes because they're going to make more money. Yeah, that would be awesome. That would be awesome. But a slightly more detailed, practical approach from potential Commissioner Martin O'Malley, that would give me a lot of faith in him as an individual. Because all you have to do is find a way for the bond market to make more return on investment, or potentially not use our bond market, right? Having the nation invest into other stuff is an option. Look, the wealthy didn't become wealthy because they mostly invested into US bonds. All right, I'm going to say something that's going to be a little unpopular, but one of the dumbest things you could potentially invest into, unless you know like a collapse is occurring, like a collapse is coming, one of the dumbest things you can invest into would be a US bond. That's just one of the dumbest things. Like that's like putting money in the bank. I'm going to save money and then I'm going to be great down the line. That's not how it works. That's not how you become wealthy. That's not how you become financially financially capable of tasting freedom. Like that's not how it works. It's never worked that way. Like you can't put money in the bank and then just expect it to sit there and make more money and then, oh, yum, 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 I feel good. That's not how you make money. You make money by investing in stuff. You invest in stuff that makes money, not the bank. You don't put money in the bank and wait for them to just like give you the good stuff. That's what the US bond market is. The US bond market is like, it's what they teach to poor people about how to make money in a safe way. That's it. That's it. The US bond market. You buy bonds, basically as a person to support the war effort, have money set aside where it'll be okay. Blah, 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 blah. I mean, the rich will only buy bonds when they know a cluster bleep collapse is coming. That should tell you everything, like about how dumb buying bonds is. So the point I'm getting at is rich people don't become rich by using the US bond market. They become rich by using all kinds of stuff and investing, making money off of things. But the problem with a presidency is that you have to have immediate solutions, something that's going to like make it better 6 months, 1 year. And that's why we're at where we're at. Because if we had a president that would go ahead and say, okay, this is the fix, it's going to take 15 years to get there. We don't have that. Look, guys, when you look at the options on the table, and I'm going to say something that, consider this, right? You have there's two potentials, right? The two that ran last time are probably going to run again this time. I'm not even going to say the name of one of them because I don't want the video to get squashed in the suggested results. I'm not even going to say the name. The point here is this: of those two, how many of them remind you of George Washington? How many of them remind you of any president within the first 5, 10, 15, 20 presidents? Maybe you haven't studied them, but just as an American who remembers their high school like class on it, of like quotes that they made and books that they wrote and things that they did, how many of you would say, well, these two are like that president from back in the day? None of you would say. None of them. I mean, maybe one is significantly, obviously more, but not nearly enough to be like, oh, that's an image of the one from back in the day. You just wouldn't say that. You wouldn't do it. You wouldn't say this is that person. Each party has their own. I can tell. I'll tell you in the comments. The comments will be like, oh, this person's like this and this person's like that one. Come on, guys. Realistically, do you see any of those two sitting on a boat riding across a damn near frozen river to go and fight a better armed, better, trained group of people. Do you see any one of those two options that we had in the last election being on the front lines? I don't. I see one of them obviously more aligned like that, but and then the one we currently have has difficulty with speeches, difficulty with standing and walking. It's an age thing, it's an age thing. So point here is, and I just read a comment here. It says, I don't want a slave owner. So, okay. And again, the culture has changed a little bit, but to discredit all the presidents we had to get to the point where we're at, to say one of them was a slave owner it's unethical. It would be unethical to say that you can't consider anything positive about what they did because they lived in a time where something is completely unacceptable now, but was acceptable then. Like, you have to please study them, even if they were something that you didn't like. And that's the other thing too. A lot of people, they leave comments and I get pissed off internally about it, but they'll be like, I don't like that person because of this. And then I'll ask them, what did you learn from that person? Nothing. I won't study them. I won't look at them. I won't spit on them. And I'm thinking to myself, why? How dare you? You have to study the things that you don't like. You don't think I study world history, World War II? I mean, a person with Jewish heritage, you don't think I study what the enemy did? I study what they did before what my people did as a reaction, because I want to know what they did to put my people in that position. So please don't come at it from that angle of I can never study something or someone because they were part of something that I didn't like. Frankly, many times you have to study the thing that scares you the most as the thing that's going to be the catalyst to show you what went wrong. So anyways, the point is, I hope you guys understood essentially what this video was about, which was explaining why President Biden is likely choosing this person. He's getting rid of somebody who knows the organization for a politician. The politician has promoted and pushed and had been a very successful politician, the ideas of essentially this whole raise the FICA tax so that everybody has to pay FICA taxes. But it's going to negatively affect the wealthy, which is going to negatively affect the marketplace, which is going to negatively affect the poor and the low income and the middle income. And ultimately, that is a quick win, but a midterm, long-term loss for the American people as a country. I hope what we're going to be doing is talking about some of the scary things that I'm seeing and hearing about when it comes to retirement benefits and what they want to do to the younger generations. So we're going to be doing that video next, talking about which retired people are likely on a chop block that exists for future generations, and also what's happening 10 years from now with who will essentially lose a large portion. Like when they chop that meat, they're going to take a whole portion off of your benefits if they can't come to a conclusion as to how to fix this whole situation. Because look, if nothing is done, and every year, everybody always tells me, Walter, don't worry, everything's cool. They're going to do something. Congress always does something at the last moment. Always tells me, they're like, don't worry, everything's going to be awesome. But they've been saying that since Bill Clinton. Okay, they've been saying that since Bill Clinton, which should make me then say, what is the definition of last moment? Is last moment where we know 9 to 10 years from now, the trust fund's going to run out and lots of retired people are going to be in a financial crisis? At what point does that mean last moment? Is that a year before it happens? Is that 2 years before it happens? Is that 5 years before it happens? Because remember, these presidents, they get 4 years, right? So, okay, let's look at the math here. If we have essentially 10 years to go. Let's not say 9. Let's just do 10. 10 years to go until this problem happens. That means this upcoming election and the next election, that president won't be in the firing squad of this situation. But the president thereafter, that means we're 3 presidential terms away from it all hitting the fan. I guess my question to you is, which president is going to fix this? Is it going to be the next one? Is it going to be the one thereafter? It better not be the one after that, because then it's too late. It's too late at that point. So what is too soon? Is it the next president? Is it the next presidential term, because we could have still the same president? Or is it the president after that one? But after that, that's it. There's no more time. We've run out. Look how quick these 4 years are going with President Biden. So anyways, guys, the next video will talk about essentially that and what chop block means for retired, both in the sense of those who are already on retirement benefits and those who will be getting retirement, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years from now. I'm going to get a drink. I'll catch you at the next video. Have a wonderful, wonderful day, and I will see you soon. All right, guys. Bye-bye, guys. Bye-bye.